Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, the host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. The topic of today's broadcast is developments in Brooklyn. My guests today include the borough president, the cheerleader of the borough of Brooklyn, Marty Markowitz, Mark Freud, principal of Troutbrook Company, another Brooklyn boy over there, Glenn Markman, executive director of Cushman & Wakefield, a Brooklyn young lady over here, Abby Hamlin, president of Hamlin Ventures, LLC. Another Brooklyn boy, Jeffrey Dunstan, executive director and CEO of Northeast Brooklyn Housing Development Corporation. And another Brooklyn young lady, Alyssa Goldman, director of development at Triangle Equities. Prior to the show, we were talking about 10 years, 12 years ago, people really didn't want to go to Brooklyn. Reading some of the websites, Marty Markowitz said, people were fleeing Brooklyn. They didn't want to be in Brooklyn. Why do you want to be in Brooklyn? I mean, Coney Island was shot. The Dodgers had left. There was nothing over there. I mean, you could find a good piece of pizza or spumoni. I mean, the kosher delis were limited. People weren't there. Why do people want to be there, Marty? Why is everybody flocking to come back to Brooklyn, which is the best borough, even though I do all shows and we're on everything? Why do they come back to Brooklyn? What's happening in Brooklyn, Marty?
First off, I never said that 10 or 12 years ago people were fleeing Brooklyn. What I did say is Brooklyn was impacted, like many urban centers in America, with flight of people into the suburbs. The crime rates were high, not only in Brooklyn, but throughout New York City. And many chose to leave our borough and leave New York City and move to Brooklyn Northwest, which is New Jersey, and other locations. But thank God enough good people believed in Brooklyn and drew the line in the sand and said, you know what, it doesn't get any better. And the truth is that Brooklyn offers a tremendous alternative to life in this city, which has a greater balance. In my humble opinion, Brooklyn in itself is a city. It's a city. We're not a suburb.
2.5 million people?
No, but Queens has 2.4 million people. But what I'm saying is that Brooklyn is a city. And it was a city up until 1898, as you know. And there's still a mentality that Brooklyn is a city. We have a downtown, and we also have a suburban style life. You can own a home on the water, at the water, or you can have your own boat docked by your home in Brooklyn.
But in Queens you can do that too.
But the difference is they have no city. There's no city as such in Queens. Downtown Brooklyn, Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, Borum Hill, Park Slope, that's city life. You can have it all in Brooklyn with the greatest transportation to go to the other city, which you call Manhattan. So it's a good quality of life. It's a great cultural attractions, higher education institutions, health institutions, some of the greatest restaurants, and it's hip and it's chic to live in Brooklyn. The artists live in Brooklyn. The artistic community lives in Brooklyn. The authors live in Brooklyn. The filmmakers, independent filmmakers live in Brooklyn more so than anywhere in America. I'm not saying that. Robert Redford said that. So there's a certain chicness and excitement about living in Brooklyn, and that's why people are flocking there.
Mark, why do you build in Brooklyn? I mean, you've been an investment sales broker, you've been in a variety of things, and suddenly, 5 years ago, you decided to go into Brooklyn, and you went into a section of Brooklyn that nobody really wanted to go into. You went to an area which is near the Atlantic Yards. Why did you go?
Actually, that's how I first met Marty. We developed a building, about a 55,000 square foot storage facility that was directly across from the Ratner Atlantic Retail Center. And at that time, we tried to dub it NOFA, north of Flatbush Avenue, just because no one was going past Flatbush Avenue to the Fort Greene area. And that was all of 5 years ago. So we felt, for the reasons that Marty had mentioned, there was a tremendous amount of creative talent that was there. There was a dire need for a housing platform that Manhattan, for whatever the reasons, couldn't provide. And so we took our bet. And luckily enough, we bet right, and we're doing well in the borough. We've got a number of projects that we're doing, and we're very excited to be there. We think it's got a lot of potential, and we're really enthusiastic about a lot of the vitality that that Brooklyn now has.
And then, you know, we have to go to the better looking section of my audience, of my participation today. Abby, you were born in Brooklyn. You moved away from Brooklyn, and then you were in the world of big commercial office buildings. You were president of Swigweiler Enterprises. You came back to Brooklyn. And you're involved with such an interesting project in Brooklyn. You're involved with the first townhouse development since the 1920s, 14 townhouses and other components. Why did you and your partner go into Brooklyn? That was something different. We love Brooklyn, but that was a tough situation.
It was. Let me just add that this is the second time I'm coming back to Brooklyn. I did, in fact, live in Brooklyn. As Marty was explaining, there were always parts of Brooklyn that were strong and wonderful neighborhoods. And so when I came this time to look at a very specific opportunity with my partner, Francis Greenberger, I already knew these neighborhoods. I had lived in them. I had lived in them as a young person.
But you know what I think? I think that's an important thing. There was always people. I grew up in the Gravesend neighborhood. I grew up in the Fred C. Trump houses on the Belt Parkway. You know, I always relished Manhattan Beach, Seagate, Midwood. You know, these were neighborhoods. I mean, they were always, and they're still neighborhoods. You know, I remember, I don't want to age myself, but I still even remember, you know, Pitkin Avenue when it was a different Pitkin Avenue. But Brooklyn has always, you know, it's time. But downtown Brooklyn is, I think, what we really, in a way, because a lot of this is relating to downtown, but we'll discuss all Brooklyn. But you came back to downtown Brooklyn. I was educated. I went to college in downtown Brooklyn. But downtown Brooklyn was hurting. I mean, he and Rabbi Schneerson were very close. You know,
I served Rabbi for many years.
Downtown Brooklyn was hurting. It had a lot of vacant land. I was very lucky to find a site that I felt I could anchor into what was a beautiful existing neighborhood. Borum Hill is a historic neighborhood, and in fact my site on one side fronts on a row of historic townhouses, and that was really what prompted my thinking that doing new single-family townhouses, which you're correct has not been done in brownstone Brooklyn. That's what we know Brooklyn for, all of its brownstones, really since the 1920s. But really to marry and anchor my site into that really solid neighborhood, that historic neighborhood, townhouses seemed the way to go. Now, my site is much larger, and on the other side, I'm facing downtown Brooklyn. And that's the side of the site that really I need to address, as would any other developer.
And how are you addressing it? Because, you know, it's nice to have 14 magnificent townhouses, which I'd like to live in, Marty would like to live in, you know, but they're $2.6 million and they're for certain people. But there's a significant other portion of the site. And how are you addressing that? What are you doing with the balance of the site?
Well, we have the ability to build a total of 500,000 square feet on this site under the existing zoning. And that will be built in a mix of uses, including affordable housing, a very special project that's being done in partnership between Common Ground Community and the Actors Fund. And then in addition to that, more market rate housing and commercial development. We'll have retail at the base to make sure that we enliven the Skirmahorn Street and Smith Street. And it really will be a mix of uses that complement the existing community and make linkages between brownstone Brooklyn and its neighborhoods and the commercial downtown that we just sit right across from.
But you know, you bring up, and we discussed this prior to the show, that you have the capability to build perhaps 500,000 square feet of office space. And Glenn, who is probably the preeminent broker, besides being an owner in downtown Brooklyn, there's a lot of office space that's occupied today. But if you put up 500,000 square feet of office space, and with what the zoning, Marty, has been, you can put another 5 million square foot. My question is the absorption level of office space in downtown Brooklyn. Glenn?
Well, you know, you're talking about, as part of the downtown plan, being able to add 4.5 million square feet, but that's not being built day one. That's going to be phased in over time. And just the fact that it's there, it's zoned properly, will help us avoid what happened last time when New York ran out of space and the Jersey waterfront was developed.
Excuse me, but a part of the problem why, and I've had people, part of the problem was that the city, it wasn't Brooklyn, it was, the Jersey was giving that other place, I don't know what that is, but Jersey was giving, it was user-friendly. The zoning was much easier. There were certain things going on.
Well, now you have a borough that is totally user-friendly. You have a borough where people live. You have a place where everybody wants to play and eat. You have probably the most desirable place in the entire city of New York. So the only thing missing right now is that type of inventory and that type of product that's going to convince the next wave of tenants to come to Brooklyn. And who is that next wave of tenants? That next wave of tenants is media, entertainment companies, publishing firms. Those are people who are buying Abby's homes. Those are people who are going to be buying from Mark and our other guests. This is not a fantasy.
But you know,
maybe 10 years ago, it would have been a fantasy. But today, with just the borough being on such a high, and the key thing here is that New York City is running out of large blocks of space. You can count on one hand those available units. You have the New York Times headquarter building that's being built. You have the old New York Times site,
there is
Verizon,
no question, but
7 World Trade Center, and Bank America.
The question is, you know, there is Silver Cup Studios, which is the largest studio in the Northeast, is planning to build a very large building for entertainment in Queens. And you have Astoria Studios, and you have Kaufman Studios over there.
You have Steiner.
And you have Steiner. You have all this. But I think there's a question of, you know, there is developments needed all parts of Brooklyn. And I think office is needed to a point. But if Metro Tech wasn't created with major incentives, it wouldn't have happened. I mean, the government, our leaders have done a great job in Brooklyn, in different markets, I think, but we have, you know, there's a limit. You know, you're going to have competition. There's some office developments in Queens. There's the Tishman's over there, and you have others. You know, so office is one component. I think it's work, play, and all the others. But you know, my question.
But think about if you're a large tenant in New York City now, or you have a lease coming up over the next 4 or 5 years. What are you going to do? Are you going to spend $80 or $100 a square foot to be in Manhattan, and you may not find that site? Or are you going to look at a corner of Borum Place in Red Hook, where Josh Muss is building a building, where you can have 700,000 square feet. You can be in this building, call it $40 a square foot. Josh is probably going to give me an elbow. But let's say $40 a square foot. You have REAP programs that are going to reduce that $40 by probably at least $18 a square foot. Where else in this universe will you be able to find a brand new state-of-the-art office building for $22 net effective? This is going to happen, and this is going to also transform downtown Brooklyn, because where this site is going to completely change the whole Fulton. You're looking at me.
Yep.
All right, the whole Fulton experience as you walk in. It's going to change the landscape. This is going to be the place when you come over that Brooklyn Bridge and you're driving and you see this building and you can have your branding and your corporate image here. This is going to be transformational. It's going to be transformational like 4 Times Square was to 42nd Street in Manhattan, where Condé Nast and Skadden. This building has that same type of presence, this same type of strength.
Brooklyn, as Marty said, is a city. It is more than only downtown. Downtown is having a lot of resurgence. Okay, Alyssa is building a property, a magnificent retail situation that they broke ground last week.
That's right.
Okay, where you're going to have, in the Triangle, in an area that needed this retail. This is great for the community.
Yeah, no, we're really excited about it. We broke ground on a Target anchored center, 300,000 square feet, 500 car parking garage, right in what we really call the heart of Brooklyn. It's really the center of Brooklyn. You know, Target had opened up a location in Atlanta
It's right near
Terminal.
Brooklyn College.
It's right across the street from Brooklyn College, right next to the Performing Arts Center, right next to the subway lines. They call it the Junction because of that. It's a true hub with all the transportation network right there. There's 15,000 students alone at Brooklyn College that come through there every single day. And there was such an untapped market there. And we really feel very strongly about bringing amenities to an area that are really lacking. And we see it as really a gateway into the whole Flatbush Avenue retail corridor. And we really see it as rejuvenating that area and much in need. So, no, we're very excited about it, and we certainly, obviously, Target is very excited about it, and we have full confidence in the area.
Plus the other retail you're going to bring there.
Right.
Restaurant, I hope.
Yes, absolutely.
No,
we want the sit-down restaurants.
You have another floor. You have an entire
yes,
additional
about
floor.
80,000 square feet.
And by the way, what she's doing there, her firm Triangle, will also spur development on Flatbush Avenue, in my opinion, further north. I hope we get to the Loeys Kings.
That's exactly
that
right.
Theater open
Especially
again.
the Loeys Kings, where I graduated high school.
My first
from.
date was there.
But you know
she
what?
said no, by the way. Anyway, but
No, I think, but that's one thing. And prior to the show, Jeffrey, we were talking about what happened. Starrett City was there for years, and what was lacking in that neighborhood?
Starrett City. You mean Spring Creek?
Spring Creek. They changed the name. But Starrett City, Spring Creek was lacking one major situation. They needed that retail, and out of nowhere, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of it is that retail will create a whole new host of housing in the East New York section of Brooklyn, an area that basically has been ignored for a long time. You know, my organization has been around 20 years in that part of the urban communities of Brooklyn, redeveloping. And so, you know, for us to see, and especially for myself to see, as a product of that community, to see it begin to revitalize itself with both commercial, home ownership, which is very important,
and it created great
housing.
Jobs. It created jobs.
A lot of jobs.
You know, and it took a section. I mean, you know, you didn't, you know, Brooklyn, Marty and I are too close in age, but, you know, downtown Brooklyn, you had A&S, you had Fulton Street, you had this, and then you had other areas, small retail. I mean, this is a major, and then in the 70s it was King Plaza that was built. I mean, and this Spring Creek is another thing, and now the Triangle is another thing.
And there'll be more.
And that's
Williamsburg, Greenpoint, along the waterfront, there'll be significant retail. The Navy Yard will have additional retail. The Atlantic Yards will have additional retail. So there are so many opportunities that await us. And the truth is, I want to go back to something you said. I'm not worried about the fact. The fact is that we don't have enough quality office space available. And we don't have to manufacture ambiance like they have to on the other side over in New Jersey. We've got an opportunity. We have that balance of work and live. We really do. You have that with the beautiful neighborhoods that surround these commercial areas, the restaurant, the culture, everything. When the arena opens up, we've even got a great sports team that will destroy the Knicks. They're finished. They're history. So, and I know that
they were
this
thinking
year,
of getting two short Jewish guys to play for them. I mean, we were going to do a little better.
But I'm just saying that we haven't even reached. Brooklyn has not even reached its potential yet. Where we see it, I can see it. We can see it. And it's happening as we're talking.
Let me interject here for a minute. I think there's a couple of points that we've made that are worthwhile to focus in on. You know, if you sit at Smith Street at any given day and you take a view of what you see, it's really quite splendid. And it's unique to match that atmosphere if you're a worker in a commercial area, coming to that Smith Street restaurant, sitting there and not having perhaps the massing or the density that one would have in other areas, whether it be the Jersey City waterfront or the Manhattan, marketplace. So I think that in and of itself adds a quality of life to the worker. You've got 150,000 people that come and go on a daily basis. Brooklyn has a tremendous infrastructure that we've been talking about. So if you put if you put this into a basket, you not only have a wonderful neighborhood, you not only have a rich afterlife, a 24/7 community, you not only have the ability to go to BAM, which increasingly is becoming a national and international destination for cultural events. You really have a splendid city within a city that can only grow and only do wonderful things. I think Triangle is obviously, as we are, keen on the Gowanus area for very good reason. That in many ways.
For my audience who don't know what the Gowanus area, you know, the only time people hear of it, you know, there's a jam on the Gowanus. What is the Gowanus area?
Well, I guess one would define the Gowanus area. It depends on the geographic boundaries, but I would say it's the area in which the Gowanus Canal pretty much flows through, and one can visualize it by looking at Park Slope to the east, and perhaps Carroll Gardens to the west, and then if you move further south, perhaps Sunset Park, and then maybe you would call it being bookcased, if you will, to the north by Atlantic Avenue, or perhaps a couple of streets over. So
you see growth in the Gowanus neighborhood?
Well, we see growth in many areas of Brooklyn,
Red Hook.
as we've discussed. Red Hook is obviously creating a fantastic destination point for the international traveler.
Can't wait for those cruise ships to come. Oh, they're starting soon. A couple more weeks.
And we talked about this at dinner. Once the cruise ships start coming,
Can't wait.
these people are going to end up on Montague Street. They're going to have 2 hours of time to kill because they're worried they're going to miss their boat.
They can go to Fulton Street and get something
go to
from the merchants.
They'll have lunch at the Heights Cafe.
Always go.
It's always good for the plugs. Okay.
And then what they'll do is they'll take a stroll and they'll go into Dumbo, and they'll take a stroll across Fulton Mall.
Well, Glenn, we talked about this a little bit because a little bit earlier, that it's hard to imagine somebody getting off a cruise ship and taking a walk all along the water line to get up to Montague Street, because that is a long walk. And whether it's seasonal or not seasonal, because obviously it would be seasonal, it's something that we can talk about more. I question whether or not somebody would do that.
I think you're right. Maybe getting off the boat. But you know, these people who are on that cruise ship and they're worried, oh, we're boat's going to leave, we're going to be stuck. What are we? They tend to want to get over that Brooklyn Bridge pretty quickly. They're going to have downtime, and that downtime is going to be to the benefit of all of Brooklyn. And the more downtime they have, the further the different neighborhoods they're going to go to.
Well, I think there has to be some sort of cooperation then, and maybe
that's going to be the bid, and that's all the things that Marty is
with shuttles and destinations.
We have
and
no question that the cheerleader will be pushing.
We'll be pitching them to spend a day before they go, a day after they come off the cruise ships. And while on the ships, we're hoping that they'll have an itinerary of things to do, and so really, what it does do, it opens up a significant amount of tourist opportunities for the borough, which is very, very important. Plus, equally important, it uses our beautiful waterfront that's been abandoned for generations in a way that's conducive and celebrates the waterfront. But while we're all happy here, there are still some significant problems. The lack of affordable housing. It should not be minimized. People leave Brooklyn, and some do, not because they want to leave. They can't afford the good life we have here, and that's a problem. There are many families in Brooklyn, young people starting families, others that have been here for generations that are being displaced with new development. So the constant challenge in government, and I love everyone here in the private sector, and I respect you enormously, and you're the engine, but it's the job of government to encourage that development and at the same time temper it so that it works for people of all incomes. It's very, very important. I never want Brooklyn to be very poor and very wealthy in that sense. Has to be an income diversity as well as our ethnic diversity.
You know, we were saying, you need affordable housing and you need market rate housing, and
absolutely.
But the big problem, Marty, is that with land prices going up, it's difficult for any of these developers over here to build market rate rentals because the cost of the land is, Brooklyn is now $150 to $200 a square foot everywhere. I mean, 4 years ago you could have gone to Coney Island and paid $40 or $30 a foot. Now they're talking $125 a foot. So that, coupled with the cost of construction, makes it difficult for any developer to build.
Right. I don't expect the developers to use their resources. That's not necessarily the responsibility. Unfortunately, government, especially on the federal level, and equally so on the state level, have really shirked their responsibilities. But the good news is that I believe this country will correct their mistakes. And the elections to come, I believe increasingly they'll focus more and more time on providing the subsidies and the incentives that allow those that build to use their brilliance and also make it profitable for them to build affordable housing. We have to build, and then we also have to preserve the housing we have today that is affordable. So we've got some significant challenges, and I can't emphasize enough. The other part is overdevelopment. We have to make sure that the neighborhoods that are low density, primarily single-family homes, remain primarily single-family homes. That's what makes
the Midwood
Brooklyn
project
charming.
Right?
Whether it's Midwood or Sheepshead Bay or a Mill Basin, whatever it may be, Manhattan Beach, where my wife was raised.
A wealthy world.
Right. She would never date a Crown Heights boy, but I only met her a few years ago. So things have changed. But all I'm trying to say is that, so that's the challenges, the excitement, and the challenges that we face.
But, you know, one of the things that I do appreciate about our borough president, and years ago when he came into office, I was on his Housing Transition Committee, his commitment to affordability. And the thing that makes Brooklyn affordable is groups like Northeast Brooklyn that deal with the city in very complicated housing issues.
Right.
And
Why don't you tell us about the 2 or 3 projects that you're doing today?
Yeah, and I say fortunate because we survived the projects. We completed 180,000 square feet of residential space in Bed-Stuy, Brownsville, and East New York. And this is in city-occupied housing. So we're relocating families, developing buildings, putting them back in on the affordability side, and at the same time creating, in our market rate units, which in this case on the rental side is less than $1,000. All right, so we're still staying with the affordability and maintaining those rents at 700, 750 at the max. All right. Other things that we're doing also include now the fact that we are not going to see any more new homes in our area built. Now we're looking at the condo market and saying, we have to begin to create this market in our own market. And again, we can't price ours at $750 a square foot, but we can do it based on our experience dealing with city and the state and figuring out how to get those dollars in there. But also we have to look at projects like I'm looking at a project without the subsidy. And the reason that we need to look at the project without the subsidy is so that, again, we can stabilize the housing so that we are attracting our professionals to stay in the community. Because sometimes with the subsidies in there, we actually are locking them out of the market. So we need to bring them back into the market. So, I'm excited about the projects that we're doing.
Jeff, we discussed this a little bit earlier, but we're saying that there's really no subsidy, but in essence, these are city-owned properties, and you're not paying market rate for this property. Whereas, Mike, you mentioned earlier that we can't afford to pay $200 a foot, buildable foot on these sites, and then build residential housing that's affordable. And so that's what we're coming up against. Unless it's city-owned property, and we can get it at a discount.
Unfortunately, we don't have, the good thing is we don't have the city-owned property.
That's right.
I mean, when Ron Molis was on my show and we were talking about Schaefer's Landing, which I think is a magnificent deal,
it is.
He said, we got the land for free. That's how we were able to do it. And the travesty was that they had 140 units of affordable housing, but 37,000 applications for 140 units is difficult. I mean, there were 37,000 people who were unhappy who didn't get the housing.
I think everyone in the real estate community recognizes that there's a tremendous need for affordable housing. It probably, at least the consensus over there at the dinner table and within the industry, is most likely that what will happen is that if areas are slated for rezoning, for instance, the Brooklyn waterfront being a prime location that would talk to this point, you'll probably have to build some component of affordability
Which has happened.
Which
I
was
mean,
done in Williamsburg,
this is something that Marty
Right.
and the legislative. I mean, Williamsburg has with the inclusionary housing an affordable component, and it's
Right.
important.
And I might add that in every single project that comes in front of me, where I have any role at all, where I have a role, I absolutely insist upon affordability. Absolutely insist.
So the Board of Ed building, for instance, in the market that some of us are developing in, is a prime example whereby it was sold at market value, but an allocation of that price
affordable
point
housing.
went for affordable housing. So it will be some type of increment of a perhaps a for sale project, or it will be a property that gets rezoned that will subsequently have to have an affordable component, whether it be the Atlantic Yards that will have, as we were discussing over the dinner table, which will have an affordable component off-site or on-site and off-site.
But you know what? I don't play controversy. There should be on-site a component. Don't move the component of affordable.
There will be. The rentals, the affordable rentals will all be on-site. In terms of affordable cooperatives, condominiums in this case, he is not necessarily tied to do that on-site. The fact that he wants to do it, Ratner, is to be commended. He will provide, once this is completed, affordable home ownership. And if we don't do that, the neighborhood around there is gentrifying as we speak. And the way to preserve the income diversity of the area is by making sure this project goes ahead. And it will go ahead because it's best for Brooklyn, for this and future generations. Having said that, we're running out of land. And this is a problem in Brooklyn. And many communities don't want to build high. They don't want, I understand that. So this demand of people who want to come into Brooklyn, who want to stay in Brooklyn, who want to grow a family, we can't build up, and we have no land. So therefore we have to begin to look at, and we are, some of the housing the citywide groups that have come up with ideas like building on top of supermarkets. For instance, loads of our supermarkets are just one story, and there is adequate room above supermarkets and other creative approaches. That's what the future brings, I think.
And I'll give you another
as an
situation.
example, small little example.
In the 40s, in the 50s, even in the 70s, when they built certain of these Mitchell Lama
great housing.
and these other projects,
Best housing.
they built very large parking spaces, not garages. So you have these large spaces, which today, what certain developers are doing, and perhaps the city should do this with the city projects, get rid of the parking, build parking lots, and take those parking lots and build apartment houses. So this way you have the land and you're utilizing it better.
But we lose parking.
Right?
We lose
No,
the
you
regular
don't.
parking.
No,
We have to keep the parking.
I'm
We go
saying
further
you
underground
build
for
a
the parking.
structured parking lot, and then on top you can build it because there are these large developments.
We
over
have to
there.
look at all creative approaches. The good news is, I'd rather have it this way, where the demand to move into Brooklyn is at an all-time high rather than it was back in the 60s and late 50s and early 70s, where it was the other way. So this is okay. This is a good
let's
thing.
get off. Yes.
Downtown Brooklyn through.
No, we're off downtown Brooklyn. No more talks about your restaurant.
The one
we're
thing,
off
no,
downtown
we're not going
Brooklyn.
to mention the Heights Cafe again. All right? But the one thing we
We
haven't really
normally
discussed.
don't edit the show, but we're editing anything about the Heights Cafe tonight.
3, thanks. The one thing that we haven't really discussed is this incredible transportation hub.
Yes.
I mean, there are 14 train stations, train stops, lines
And the Long Island
coming
Railroad.
and the Long Island Railroad. Think about Lower Manhattan, what they would love to have. They would love to have the Long Island Railroad. That is not only in downtown Brooklyn, but hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent to improve it. Willoughby J Street, MTA is spending a lot of money to improve that station.
Let's
mentioned
leave downtown Brooklyn. We have certain time. Yeah. Now let's talk about other places in Brooklyn. We have Coney Island.
Yes.
Coney Island, I remember Brighton Beach, Max's Sunshine. That's when you used to have the sun reflectors. Coney Island.
Brighton Private, don't forget
Brighton
that.
Private. I mean, this was it. I mean, you grew up in Brooklyn. What do you see happening in Coney Island?
I honestly, I'm going to turn it over to somebody who knows better because I can't say that I really know what's going on in Coney Island.
Okay, what about other...
I think Coney Island, anytime you have the beach, you have water, you have major transportation, you have something that should occur there. So water is magical. You know, the beach is beautiful. You know, we go out on the weekends to Connecticut and it's a rocky beach. This is fine. This is like being in the Caribbean, right, Marty?
Well,
the
if
sand?
you have good imagination,
right.
At least the color of the water, you have to have very good imagination. But it is our Caribbean. And the majority of people in Brooklyn, like me, summer in Brooklyn. And Glenn is right. The truth is that the boardwalk is clean, it's safe, it's lit. With our national winning minor league team, the Brooklyn Cyclones, ripping up the league. Well, not last year. We lost to Staten Island. What a shanda, what a shame. But the bottom line is that it's clean, it's safe, and you have to take natural advantage of the Coney Island, the brand. Everyone in America and beyond knows Coney Island. And what we're doing is we're very much involved now in the planning and soon the implementation of making Coney Island a 24/7 destination, year-round, not just seasonal, indoor, outdoor amusements. Bring the retail.
But I think that's important. That's exactly what if Triangle, if they did what the Junction, you bring some retail, which is lacking in Coney Island. I mean, because the Bay has limited retail, but there's no real, there's no Target in Coney Island. There's no Target.
It's incredibly underserved, just like the rest of Brooklyn. I mean, there's always such a need for retail in Brooklyn, as well as any of the boroughs, but certainly Brooklyn.
You know, we discussed affordability, but on another note, there's an affordability of transportation to get to Coney Island, and if gas pricing continues to escalate, and it appears for the foreseeable future that it is, you have a wonderful public way to get to Coney Island. And I think that there's I've been out there a bunch of times, and I find it a wonderful atmosphere that continues to get better on a yearly basis. I would say, well, in the past 2 or 3 years, it's really become a destination point for a lot of people that do not have the ability to get out to the beach or the Caribbean, as Coney
Island. Coney Island is wonderful. I mean, Brighton Beach, Little Odessa is interesting. I mean, what has happened to that neighborhood? I mean, it's really great.
I think, as a Brooklynite growing up and spending a lot of time in Coney Island, is one of the things that I miss about Coney Island is the entertainment. I mean, it was the destination to go during the summer. You know, we've lost a lot of Coney Island over the years, and we need to, you know, I don't know what's going to happen out there.
The ski ball parlors, you know.
Somehow I can't envision, a casino hotel in Coney Island.
All right.
I can't envision those kind of things happening.
Listen to this, Michael. Do you know what Cushman & Wakefield is sponsoring this summer? 2-on-2 beach volleyball. We are the sponsor of what is going to be an incredible. Where is that taking place? On the beach. On the beach in Coney Island.
Beach tennis is
in August. On NBC,
beach
all over the country, all over the world, will be beach volleyball. Tell me, 2 years ago, if you ever dreamed that would happen. Tell me, 3 years ago, if you ever dreamed that the NBA, a brand that is famous all over the universe, is going to have a franchise in Brooklyn that every kid growing up is going to feel really proud about.
We may even call them dem bums again, too, you know.
Well, you know what? I have a tough time even bringing up the old stuff because the new, what's happening in the future.
We're letting the boy from Lafayette keep quiet so the other guests can talk.
But I agree that the stadium has been a big success in Coney Island, and it's really put a focus back on sports in Brooklyn. But again, I have to say that, you know, a couple of weeks ago I was reading some article, and one of the large real estate folks bought land for $13 million and whatnot. And if they keep acquiring at that level, then what really happens in Coney Island? Who ultimately controls the land?
There's an assemblage in Coney Island that is being marketed today for $95 million. It's a large assemblage. That's a lot of money. I mean, there hasn't been that many Manhattan assemblages at this price. But you know, as someone said to me, Coney Island is the Hamptons.
There's a vision here that the city, the mayor, the city's Economic Development Corporation, my office, and Councilman Reckier and others, and that is that we have an idea of the mix of commercial and residential, maybe a hotel and a convention center, amusements. You know, the kids today, skee ball is not their thing anymore. The bumper cars, it was for me. It's not today, the electronics and all that. And the new amusements that are indoors, a water park I'd love to see down there. We already have Coney Island, USA. We already have the Siren Festival. We have the very modest Mermaid Parade. It's probably more your speed, I think. You'd probably be pretty good over there.
Thank you.
I'd suggest you wouldn't dress like that when you go down there. We have concerts, and by the way, we have great entertainment. I know because I produce the shows every Thursday in Coney Island.
It's Tuesday night the fireworks used to be on.
Well,
right?
we have it Friday nights. The fireworks are
Used to be
Friday
Tuesday
nights.
night.
I know it's Friday.
We watched it from
you
the
got,
Bell
You have
Parkway.
the
It was
roller.
very
You
good.
have the world-class Wonder Wheel. You have the Cyclone, which is the roller coaster in America. It's certainly.
And you have Nathan's.
And you've got Nathan's and all the other.
Gargiulios.
And Gargiulios. You got.
What
So
about the
you've got
aquarium?
wonderful. And the aquarium.
You almost mentioned the aquarium.
You know what? It's a great day trip. That's how we're selling it, by the way, for folks that come into New York during the season until we're year-round. And that is, it's a great day trip, really. And it's a great place. I've met some people this past summer when the kids who don't live in Brooklyn, they live out in New Jersey, they came to Coney Island. Ma, you mean we can just cross the street and go on the roller coaster? They're accustomed to going into a park, and then you park, and then you go through. And here you're right off the street, and there you are. And we don't have to manufacture it. It exists. So Coney Island is definitely going to be, in the days ahead, one of the most exciting locations to work and to live. You got Seagate right down the road there, which is a private gated community with many other homes right on the seashore. Not bad. And certainly the area of Coney Island, and
What about
it's going to be
Bed-Stuy?
unbelievable.
What about Bed-Stuy? What's going to happen? You know, Bed-Stuy, Ocean Hill, Brownsville,
Beautiful housing.
and East New York. I mean, you know, East New York was
Listen,
and it still has a high crime.
I can clearly speak to those areas because I grew up there. And Bed-Stuy clearly has a direct link to everything that happens downtown Brooklyn. It continues to have some of the most wonderful architecture. It continues to have the most beautiful brownstones in Brooklyn. We're working with HUD, and we've taken 20 buildings that we have developed and we're going to resell. And again, it addresses affordability, but the point is that we're bringing people back to the community. It's Commercial Street, Fulton Street, you know, is already seeing the benefits of what is taking place downtown. You know, so somewhere in the middle we're going to meet. So there's a lot of good things happening in Bed-Stuy. Bed-Stuy in recent years has really come together to really look at its needs, and working with the local council person, Al Van, and the Assemblywoman Annette Robinson, they pulled together what is known as the Coalition for the Improvement of Bed-Stuy, which represents, you know, the 36 groups in the area that are doing all forms of development, from creating new health facilities, not only in housing. We just got Applebee's into the neighborhood.
Applebee's just opened, doing
right?
great there. Food Town.
Food Town came in. So
And I guess
Bed-Stuy,
Starbucks maybe
hopefully
maybe around the
real
corner.
soon. But the point is that Bed-Stuy is responding, and it's responding very well to what we're seeing happen, both on the economic development level.
And what about
on the real estate.
Brownsville?
Brownsville again? Again, I'm glad to report that we've sold almost 80% of the homes in Brownsville. So you
And
know,
more to come.
Yeah, and
Plenty more to come.
More to come. It's been a boom for the last 15 years.
Abby,
so we've seen a strong.
You're taking downtown, you know, and what Jeffrey is talking about, and you know what Mark spoke about, you know, in Gowanus, and my buddy and co-Brooklynite, the cheerleader, spoke about everything else. I mean, have you looked at other sections of Brooklyn?
Yes, and I continue to look at other sections of Brooklyn. I personally really focus, and I know my focus is in the luxury, design-oriented, more the chic neighborhoods that we discussed, the trendy neighborhoods. That's the product that I create. That's really what I'm best at. But I also partner with others who do other kinds of housing. And so I look to many different areas. I've been around Williamsburg a great deal. I know it very well. I've looked in all of the other, I would call them the brownstone neighborhoods and the artistic neighborhoods. I'm very eager to participate in some of what the local BAM, Local Development Corporation, is going to be doing in the future, some of the Brooklyn Bridge Park development
I mean,
in
the Brooklyn
future.
Bridge Park, I think, is going to be wonderful with this 250-room hotel. And I think what Josh Must did, you know, by building this hotel, being one of the best Marriotts in the country, and now with this addition, I mean, Brooklyn lacked a major catering facility. They had the catering facilities, but they didn't. But when they opened up that catering hall, that was the busiest part over there.
That's the fourth largest catering hall in the city of New York.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? We're all talking about phenomenon that has occurred over the past 4 or 5 or 6 years. And Brooklyn really is in its infancy of growth in many ways. I think what we haven't talked about is the social fabric of Brooklyn. And being someone that's only been out there for all of 5 years, if you will, I've noticed that what you find unique in Brooklyn is that the people that live in Brooklyn find Brooklyn very important to them. And that means that they're very involved on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis in their communities. And I think that's a very unique aspect as a developer to find in many a locale. And in Brooklyn, it definitely hits home. And I think that then creates for a wonderful area in that you have many things going on at any given point, and you have the input of the community. And some of it is sometimes welcome more so than at other times, but I think it creates for an interesting dynamic that will create for that.
And besides he not being shy, I think one of the most interesting things, I speak at a variety of organizations. I think Brooklyn, there are Chamber of Commerces in every one of the boroughs. There's only one Chamber of Commerce. The Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce brings together the best group, and they care, and they work, and they want to be there, and they have a real estate, and everybody wants to come to the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. Ken Adams and his crew are dynamic. They have really, you know, they are a great team player with you. They're really out there in every section of Brooklyn. They don't talk downtown. They are Brooklyn. They're Marty. They're the same way.
And the Brooklyn Council, led by Bob Catello, Alan Fishman, you know,
and
myself, and some of the other leaders of all the major educational. But this group that works so well together is the reason that these things have happened. Because yes, over 5 years, it seems like there's a lot occurring. But it's really been a 10 or 15-year effort to get it to this point.
We have certain problems also. Marty addressed the housing. We have another problem. Marty says we have artists, we have artisans, we have industry. It's great with what happened in Williamsburg, but it's unfortunate that some of these people are being forced out of their neighborhoods. And, you know, you don't want to lose the fabric. As I was saying today, I happen to be with City Storage. Now, their property, they'd like to keep it, and there are developers who want to build next to it. But if they lose the property, 400 people who have jobs over there are going to be unemployed. And these people live and they need these jobs, and where are they going to go? They're going to have to find a job. So, I mean, it's great. You know, you have to have that mix.
Well, the mayor, his economic team, and my office, all of us, we love Norman. He's done a great job, and he's such a Brooklyn booster and cheerleader himself. I proudly share the title of Mr. Brooklyn with him too. We will continue to work with him to make sure that those jobs are not lost, and City Storage is not lost to Brooklyn. By the way, I want to go back. What we have in Brooklyn is we're big town, small town. That's really what we're saying. We're big town and we're small town. We're a sense of family, we're a sense of community. And I always say that Brooklyn today is America tomorrow, because what's happening in Brooklyn today, America is going to look like this tomorrow. We manage of every ethnic, race, creed, nationality, you name it, we got it. 99.9% of the time we live with each other as brothers and sisters of the same Almighty. And that's the beauty of Brooklyn. And we have our characters, because no place has more character or characters than Brooklyn. And it works. It works.
You know, I was actually at a meeting today with Brooklyn College and a mix of other people. We're starting a bid in the Flatbush Avenue corridor, because, and the Junction and Triangle Equities and Target will be one of the largest landowners in that area, and they're starting a bid in that neighborhood, and we're all very excited about it. And so we had a meeting today, and a woman came up to me, and we started talking about the comparison. She was trying to say how to make this area better so that people don't leave the area and go shop in other areas. And she compared it to Roosevelt Field. And I said to her, you don't want this to be Roosevelt Field. You want this to be a true New York City street where you have the streetscape. And
but it's very interesting. Exactly. What's happening, there's a development in Queens called the Shops at Atlas Park.
That's right.
The term is a lifestyle center. And this comes out of the Midwest. People don't want to be in Roosevelt Field. And these lifestyle centers are open area spaces where they heat the space over there, and you have a Borders books or you have some other things, and you can do that in certain sections of Brooklyn. You could replicate that in Coney Island. You could replicate it in parts of Williamsburg. You could replicate it in Bed-Stuy, because and it really creates a village. It's a little village, and I think that's what you're really saying.
You don't want to get rid of the mom and pop shops, but you want it to be, mixed in with some national retailers. So you do have some anchors. So you do have a little bit more of a draw.
And that's exactly what they're doing in the Shops at Atlas Park. They're putting a little butcher shop, not a chicken market.
No.
And they're putting a bakery, and they have a Borders, and they have a sports center. And this is what it is. Because, you go out to Roosevelt Field, it's like one box after another box.
That's not what New York City is. You need to continue the streetscape and that feeling of a community and the Main Street concept.
And what Abby is doing with these townhouses and this mixed-use development is really great. And I have to thank EDC and have visionaries of putting you and other people together. I think that's important. And what Mark is trying to do, in the Gowanus and other sections, you were a pioneer. You and Shia Boimel Green went to that other side of Atlantic, Atlantic Avenue.
We've done well in, as I would say, picking tertiary locations. We're in the process of finishing a location at the gateway to Red Hook, as I call it. And it was all of 2 years ago that, again, it was not an area that one would have necessarily looked at and saw, as we call it, luxury housing. But we're getting $700 a square foot for one-bedroom apartments. And I think that the people of Brooklyn understand design very well, like Manhattan. I encourage, I guess, the design aspect of buildings when you build, because I think that the Brooklyn community, perhaps more so than other communities where we've developed, has really focused on that. And we hope to replicate that in other areas as well.
I wanted to say, yes, Mark, when we talk about the fabric of Brooklyn, right, and we talk about, the cost per square foot and what people can purchase and buy, we also have to remember that the fabric of Brooklyn is very diverse. And when you begin to, cost out the square footage higher, in reality, you are pushing folks out to some degree. And so in order to keep that diversity in the neighborhood, there has to be a consciousness of balance. So you can't come along and bring in 500 units of luxury housing and not want to do something with the housing that's already there.
I think there's a desire, Jeff, to do that, and what we just said before is that it's too difficult for a private developer to do that, paying market for the land itself. The numbers just don't work, and that's what we discussed before, and there is going to have to be some public participation in that.
I agree.
But there's desire.
I also, but I want to say this. I think that, again, the work that my organization has done over the years clearly has been done out of a social response and commitment to Brooklyn. But at the same time, in order for us to continue to be viable, we also have to look at how do we bring housing into our communities that meet the needs of the upper income folks, right? So the person that may not purchase $700.50 a square foot, I want that person at the $350 or $400 a square foot, right? Why is that important? Again, fabric and diversity. If I can keep professionals in my neighborhood, that's great. I'm not saying that they shouldn't go where they want to go, but Brooklyn's hub is downtown, and we all know that. The great arts community that's there. If nothing else, that's clearly represented in Brooklyn. The plan that BAM came up with years ago has shown itself to be a fantastic plan, and I'm glad to see it happening. But I am concerned that we could, if we're not careful, we can disrupt that fabric.
Abby?
I got to throw in a little controversy to end this thing up.
Right, because we're pretty close to ending the show, too.
Okay, I got to say it. Brooklyn House of Detention. Talk about
We have 3 minutes. I'm going to have
wait. Talk about streetscape. Talk about use in a residential community. Marty, help me here. Who other than the Department of Corrections is thinking about the balance and the big picture?
As of right, they have a right to reopen the house of detention. Right. But we have an opportunity here that few generations ever had before. And that is that because of the sizzling real estate market and the location of the house of detention, we have an opportunity, I think, by going out to the development community with one goal: rip it down. Rip down the house of detention.
I'll bid tomorrow.
Rebuild, excuse me.
We'll be fighting against each other.
Build a signature building that may be commercial and residential, retail on the first and second floors, and also recognize that we have a responsibility to have a prison as well.
But somewhere else.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Mixed use.
I said that you can put it there, you can mask the house of detention, you can build a new jail that is more efficient in space, that offers the maximum security, and by masking it with a signature building, we can have it. We can have it all. Believe me, it was up to me. The house, we wouldn't have prisoners, and we wouldn't have crime, and we wouldn't have a house of detention. But reality forces all of us to be realistic, and that is that. But the opportunity here is, rather than just reopen the house of detention, I say rip it down, rebuild a new building, add on, if necessary, the prison. Mask it up, retail it, and bring together all of Atlantic Avenue, which is interrupted by the house of detention. And besides, it's an ugly building. Yeah. We really could do something exciting there. And watch, stay tuned.
I realize it. I realize it's hard. It's hard to believe, but we're close to 60 minutes. That's a different show, but we're not 60 minutes. And I think that all of my audiences, we air in all of New York City and in Brooklyn, of course, because it is the city, really got a good perspective today about what's happening in Brooklyn. We failed to, and I'll bring it because we only have about 45 seconds, we have an IKEA opening, which is going to be great. We have a Fairway opening up in Brooklyn. We have the Triangle. We have all of these great things, the cruise ship.
And we're even giving something in Manhattan, Juniors.
And Juniors. I'd like to thank tonight.
In Brooklyn and Manhattan.
They didn't bring me the Juniors cheesecake, so I'm a little upset, but next time. I'd like to thank the hardworking borough president of Brooklyn, the cheerleader Marty Markowitz, Mark Freud, Trapper Company, Glenn Markman, who has some type of restaurant, which I'm not going to talk about anymore, of Cushman and Wakefield, something in downtown Brooklyn. Abby Hamlin, who is building townhouses and other properties in downtown Brooklyn of Hamlin Ventures. Jeffrey Dunstan doing a great job as the CEO and Executive Director of Northeast Brooklyn Development Corporation. And last but not least, Lisa Goldman of Triangle Equities. Next month, we're going to be talking about developments all over with residential developers. Also, remember, 6 times a week, the one-on-one Mike Stoller Show, Building New York, where we talk about individuals doing what they do best by making and changing the city of New York. Thank you.
Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.